Good morning. Hello. We are live. I hope. Are we live? I think we're live. Why do I ask? Because as I clicked on the old Streamlabs OBS to begin the broadcast today, it said updating. And we've had some glitchy problems this week. I don't know if it's internet or if it's software. And then it says, as it's loading, if you have any problems, download the installer, a fresh installer, and do it from there. So I waited for it to self-install. There's Dora. Good morning, Dora. Thank you. And so I went to the website because I've learned my lesson in the past with these software updates. I downloaded a fresh version of the software at 8:30 and installed it and ran everything and then said, well, when that happens, you have to restart the whole computer. And that takes a while because we have a lot of things running on this computer. So I said, oh my gosh, it's 8:40. I'll blah, 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 blah. Restart. Which seemed, of course, to take longer than ever to restart the computer. I really like to shut down and then restart, but this time I just said, just restart. We don't have to turn the power off, as we learned yesterday from our iPhone fakery, where people try to put software on your iPhone and make you think that you've turned it off when you haven't, because there are no hardware buttons. Well, my iMac has a hardware button to turn it all the way off. And then I loaded it back up and crossed my fingers and checked the Wi-Fi, and right now we're running 38% CPU, 60 frames per second, which is good. Nothing's being dropped, which is good. And our upload is 61 kilobytes per second, which is very, very good. When we were having our glitchy problems the other day, we were down in the dumps like 500 kilobytes a second instead of 6,000. And we were dropping 24% of our frame rates and 36% of our frame rates, and none of it made any sense. None of it was any of my doing that I'm aware of. Well, it's Friday. Most people say, thank goodness it's Friday. And I say, oh no, it's Friday. Which means I can't see you again until Monday, usually. Today at 10:15, Jana Marie will be here to give a vegetable lesson in American Sign Language. The eating kind of vegetable. And Saturday, Sunday, she will be here with her own show at 11 a.m. talking about American Sign Language and deafness and disability. Lots of very interesting things going on. So our software so far seems to be good. We don't seem to be glitching. I'll wave at myself at the TV across the way, and if I see myself waving back, I'll feel better. Okay. Hello. I see you waving. Oh, no, I just glitched up my... Okay, everything's fine. All right, good. Well, there are 4 words that most people do not really like to ever hear. One of them is found in a relationship. And usually the person doing the listening is the male, and the words that are being spoken are, we need to talk. Now that phrase sends shivers up and down the spine of every man I've ever met. Because you think, oh no. Now what have I done? And it's always your fault, and you just sit there and admit it and try to move on. Genuinely, of course. But in the workplace, there are also 4 words that are just as chilling. And it doesn't matter your gender or how long you've worked there. And those 4 words are... let's have a meeting. Now, I am not a meeting kind of person. I'm a lone wolf. I prefer to work by myself. I am self-employed. I find I do things a lot faster and a lot quicker if you just let me do it. I'll do it. and get it done fast, and then everything's done. Collaboration can be very troubling sometimes because people have to come to an agreement. And we talked about that in a previous live cast here on Boles TV, talking about how people value being supported and they don't value being in conflict. So why have a meeting if all you're going to do is say, yes, you're right, great, and give no feedback whatsoever? So there's nothing worse for me than being stuck in a meeting. Because no matter where it is, online, in person, you're there at a certain amount of time, for a certain amount of time, and at a specific amount of time. You can't have a meeting that's asynchronous. Doesn't work. People want to be in real time with you in your meetings. I don't care if it's an in-person meeting. I don't care if it's a Zoom meeting. I don't care if it's on the phone meeting. Let's don't have a meeting. Hey, let's have a meeting. No, let's don't have a meeting. Now, Steve Jobs, of Apple fame, wasn't big on meetings either, so he had 3 rules that he lived by, and that many other managers today also try to live by. First rule was have as few people in the meeting as possible. Okay, that makes sense to me. Have only 3 agenda items, which I love. 1, 2, 3. Hello and goodbye are the first and third. That's my addition to the Steve Jobs thing. And no meeting should last longer than 30 minutes. 10 minutes is ideal. Okay, I love all of that. And the reason for having meetings, I guess, is so everyone's on the same page. And I say you can do that in email. You can do that in chat. Although I prefer email because chat, you have to be there usually in real time or people ask where you are. And then you have a Zoom meeting. And the new thing is when you're in these big meetings with people is you turn off your camera. So you're listening, but you can do other things. You can eat, you can be in the other room, you can play with your dog. And in the pandemic, people did that quite a lot. And some employers didn't care, and other employers say, we are now requiring you to turn on your camera. And that's what I would do if I were running a meeting. I would not allow people to have their cameras off because I know they're not there. If you're there, you would have your camera on. It's for people who are not there that turn their camera off, and they're not listening. So I always dread it when people say, let's have a meeting. Let's get together and talk about this. Even if it's just, hey, let's have a cup of coffee and chat about why. If you want to get together, have a cup of coffee, let's talk about, writing or philosophy, but not things that need to get done. We can just make up a list. Family meeting. Oh no, not that again. But I know some people love meetings. They live for them. And I understand people who have the power to call a meeting love wielding that power. I want all the team in the conference room in 5 minutes. And they slam their fist on the table and put their foot on the ground. Oh, I'm going to give it to you all. That's the corporate work life that many people run from. And they run from it screaming. What brought that on? I don't know. I was just thinking about meetings the other day, especially Zoom meetings, which are really worse than even in-person meetings, because in-person meetings, it is warm, you see people there, but Zoom meetings are just cold and distant, and you can't hear people, and you can't see people, and not everybody has the equal camera or the microphone, so you're straining to hear and understand, and then you're asked a question, and they can't hear you. It's just terrible. So, Djokovic in Australia has now 2 strikes against him. They revoked his visa again. But he's not out. It takes 3 strikes to get you out. Even in tennis. I don't think he's done. I think money and power talks. I think this is all theater that makes it look like Australia's doing everything they can to be fair and to not give the wealthy and the powerful privileged treatment while the rest of the country suffers. And speaking of suffering, oh boy, are we in it. In the Americas, the United States de Amerigo, The Supreme Court ruling on the OSHA thing and Biden getting turned down is just terrible. I think we're at 64% immunized, and to really have herd immunity, we need to be at 80%. And the Supreme Court that's packed and losing all of its authority in the United States, and this is just the beginning of it. Abortion is coming up. They're going to smack that around too. And they're not going to be the last legal resort anymore in America. People will not accept them because they are not impartial. And I've read a lot about the turn down, and Biden's upset. I'm upset, and Biden is telling workplaces, look, you can still enforce this on your own. You don't need me. Do the right thing. And this is my favorite response from Loris Gostin at the Global Health and Law Center at Georgetown University. The Supreme Court decision on the OSHA mandate is a major setback to President Biden's COVID strategy and will prolong the pandemic in the United States. The OSHA employer mandate was the single most effective policy for getting people vaccinated. Without a wide-reaching federal mandate, it's unlikely the national vaccination rate of just over 60% will improve. We are way behind our peer nations. The Supreme Court's decision makes it harder to see how we will effectively combat Omicron and future COVID variants. That's the whole thing. People are now talking like, once we're done with Omicron, we're done. COVID's over. Let's have a party in Times Square. This is going to go on, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. The variants are getting more powerful, not less powerful. Even more concerning is that the court is eviscerating the very ability of the federal government to protect Americans. The justices are overturning decades of precedent, upholding federal public health powers. But the court's decision is hardly a surprise. The Supreme Court is on a mission to remake the regulatory state. The conservative majority is willfully trying to make it hard, if not impossible, for the federal government to safeguard the public's health and safety, including worker safety, safe food and drugs, and environmental protection. COVID has taught us that the major risks Americans face, from infectious diseases to pollution, know no state boundaries. They are national problems requiring federal solutions, especially in a crisis. States and citizens all turn to the federal government for solutions and resources. Those federal solutions have just been severely curtailed, not just for the current pandemic, but for future public health crises. And just wait till you get a Republican president in there and you have the next outbreak, and they're going to say, too bad, live with it. Because that's what they're saying right now. These super conservatives who run these red states. It's bad for business. It's bad for people. But as the old saying goes, you get the representation you vote into office. So there are some people who love authoritarianism and who hate the state. And the state's job is to provide for the public welfare. It's in the Constitution. Now, to help me calm down and find a little bit of a cool breeze, wonderful news again from Veg News. Blimpie! The Blimpie sandwich chain just launched its first meatless meatball sub at all 200 locations. Now, isn't that wonderful? Now, what is Blimpie? I asked that question when I first moved to New York. Because a friend of mine, we were staying in his apartment, said, hey, go to Blimpie and get a sandwich. And I said, what's a Blimpie? And he looked at me like I was dumb, and I was coming from the Midwest. He said, well, Blimpie's, it's like a sub shop. I said, a sub shop? Yeah, like a hero shop, a sandwich store. I said, oh. He said, yeah, like Subway. I said, oh, Blimpie. Now, in my experience, Blimpie, at that time, maybe not anymore, had really good sandwiches. This is before I was vegan, but they had the most delicious fish sandwich you could ever buy anywhere. And now there's kind of a new Blimpie near us, and it's never very busy. Every sandwich is $12. It's very expensive. And everything they cook, they put into a microwave. So you're watching them use this delicious fresh bread, and then they take whatever ingredients you have that you need melted or heated up, and they put it in a microwave. And they take it out and done it. Now, at least Subway, when they microwave something, Dunkin' Donuts, when they microwave something, heat up something, it's in sort of a oven type thing. You can tell that it's generating heat and not microwaves because you can smell it and you can see the flames and the smoke coming out the sides sometimes. So the first foray into plant-based meat is a new meatball Parmesan made with Gardine's vegan meatballs. Gardein is a very big company, and they make really wonderful stuff, and they've been around forever. Available for, and again, makes me sad, a limited time at its 200 locations nationwide. I'm not sure why they always say limited time with these test trials. I guess it's because they're using a brand name, Beyond Meat, Impossible Burgers, Gardein meatballs, and they don't want to leave it that way as permanent on their menu, so they just do a limited thing to sell it, and then you can go buy it yourself in a store. I don't know. I find the whole thing very confusing. But I'm very happy to learn this news that we can now get a delicious Blimpie sandwich. COVID and hair loss. This is not something I've heard a lot about, but when I read it yesterday, I thought, well, that's really interesting, because people should be prepared for this. The hair loss that occurs after COVID-19 infection happens because of overactive inflammation in the body. And the inflammation can cause a shift in the hair cycle. The same thing I have learned, tangentially but sort of related, is that super heavy overweight people, 600 pounds, who then go on to lose 400 pounds, 500 pounds, a few months after that, after they have the weight loss surgery and they're losing all of this weight, they lose a lot of their hair because they're going from eating 15,000 calories a day to eating 1,200 calories a day. And their big body needs those calories just to keep going, and when it's not there, then it starts eating its own fat. But you're also losing some nutrients in the process. So when you get the weight loss surgery, I guess you lose some hair afterwards. But back to COVID, hair loss after a COVID-19 infection typically begins anywhere from several weeks to 3 months post-infection. How long it lasts can vary from patient to patient, but usually 6 to 9 months. Hair loss after a stressful situation is not unusual. People can experience hair loss after childbirth or a major surgery, weight loss surgery, and we're now seeing the same result after a COVID-19 infection in some people. That's a little bit sad, especially if you're a young kid in school and you're trying to find a mate and you're losing all your hair because you got sick. One study found that among patients who had been hospitalized with COVID, 22% were dealing with hair loss months after being discharged. Last summer in the United Kingdom, they found 79% said they'd seen cases of post-COVID hair loss in their clinics. Whew. Now that's a hammer in the head. Also, on the lovely COVID note, we have a new study telling us about blood proteins in COVID. Really super interesting. In this study, researchers studied the levels of 321 proteins in blood samples taken at 349 time points of 50 critically ill COVID-19 patients being treated in 2 independent healthcare centers in Germany and Austria. A machine learning approach was used to find associations between the measured proteins and patient survival. Now, isn't that interesting that you have all these sick people and you're thinking, what can we study about them that would be interesting? We have them here, they're immobile, they can't move, they're all ours. And that's a smart way to do it. You have all these people who are very sick, so find common boundaries between them. And maybe you'll find a cure or find some way to help them. 15 of the patients in the cohort died. A cohort is a group of people. 15 patients in the cohort died. The average time frame from admission to death was 28 days, which is a long time to suffer, a month. You get sick in a month, you're dead. For patients who survived, the median time of hospitalization was 63 days, 2 months. So if you're hospitalized with COVID, you're either dead in a month or you're sticking it out there, stuck for 63 days. The researchers pinpointed 14 proteins which, over time, changed in opposite directions for patients who survive compared to patients who do not survive on intensive care. The team then developed a machine learning model to predict survival based on a single time point measurement of relevant proteins that tested the model on an independent validation cohort of 24 critically ill COVID patients. The model demonstrated high predictive power of this cohort, correctly predicting the outcome for 18 of 19 patients who survived, and 5 out of 5 patients who died. So just by looking at your blood, examining your proteins, and how your blood is handling the stress and the load, they can figure out what's going on with you. They can know before you know if you're probably going to die or if you're going to be in there for 63 days and then maybe get out. Oh my goodness, it's just exhausting. And I'm full of rants and raves today. And I'm going to be back in just a moment because I got to take a blood pressure break. I'll be back in a moment. And we are back from break. Thank you for being here. I'm David Boles. This is Boles TV, BOLES.TV, streaming live with closed captions. While I'm checking our CPU usage, it's now at 38%, which I think is a little high, because all we're running is the stream and the web browser. We're at 60 frames per second, no dropped scenes, no glitches, and we're back at 6,000 kilobytes per second. Yay! So far, so good. Maybe that's why we were glitching for a couple of weeks, was because the software needed to be updated, but we were waiting for it to be updated. So one of the main things we always wonder about as human beings is the meaning of life, often, and also, how did life begin here on Earth? And we think we know, there's a big bang, there's this, there are dinosaurs, the gods in the heavens. Well, the meaning of life, the beginning of life in molecular terms, means that the ability to shuffle electrons was paramount to the beginning of life on Earth. Since the best elements for electron transfer are metals, think standard electrical wires, and most biological activities are carried out by proteins, and we just talked about blood proteins and COVID, where doctors can look at your blood and predict, based on your proteins, if you're going to die in a month or stay in the hospital for 63 days. Researchers decided to explore the combination of the two, that is, proteins that bind metals. And that is the point of this study, is that these scientists studied proteins binding with metal. That is what led to the first life on Earth. Wow. And these scientists compared all existing protein structures that bind metals to establish any common features, based on the premise that these shared features were present in ancestral proteins and were diversified and passed down to create a range of proteins we see today. And this is, like it or not, evolution. The scientific study how things evolve. This evolution of protein structures entails understanding how new folds arose from previously existing ones. So the researchers designed a computational method that found the vast majority of currently existing metal-binding proteins are somewhat similar, regardless of the type of metal that they bind to, the organism they come from, or the functionality assigned to the protein as a whole. We saw that the metal-binding cores of existing proteins are indeed similar, even though the proteins themselves may not be. We also saw that these metal-binding cores are often made up of repeated substructures, kind of like Lego blocks. The building blocks of life, Lego, metal, proteins. Curiously, these blocks were also found in other regions of the proteins, not just metal-binding cores, and in many other proteins that were not considered in our study. Our observation suggests that rearrangements of these little building blocks may have had a single or a small number of common ancestors and given rise to the whole range of proteins and functions that are currently available today. That is, to life as we know it. Mind-bending. Wonderful stuff. It really makes you think about your place in the world. Have you heard about these NFTs? NFTs and Bitcoin. Boy, you can't get away from them in 2022. Everybody's making money on these NFTs. And if there's money to be made... Oh, did you see that Travis Barker is barking about voice NFTs? Oh, no. Now that's interesting. Dora says. Is that, he sings? I mean, I know Travis Barker is a drummer, right? Is he selling images or is he selling, like, voice recordings? And while Dora types, so if there's money to be made, that means there's an opportunity for the criminal element. As we have discussed many times on this show, the criminal element are the super geniuses of the world. And if they would only take their super genius mind that they currently point to crime and would turn it to, let's say, the beginnings of the origins of life, they would figure it out for us in 5 minutes. But instead, they choose to use their genius minds to make a quick buck. And that's what's happening right now. The developers of a non-fungible token collection called Frosties vanished in a potential rug pull after buyers of the NFTs put in $1.3 million into the digital collectible. The anonymous creators reportedly disappeared on their investors, who had purchased all 8,888 tokens on January 9 via OpenSea, and we've talked about OpenSea a lot. It's a big, reputable place to buy your NFTs. And that's probably why the criminals went there, because they have a good reputation. And that's according to Blockworks, less than an hour after the cartoon ice cream collection dropped. Dora says musician with Blink-182 this morning on Twitter. I think it's voice verse, so I'm assuming there are recordings. Well, I'm going to have to investigate that and find out, because that's very interesting. And it certainly makes sense. If you can do an image, if you can do a animated GIF, a video file, why can't you put up a voice file? Hey, this is Travis Barker saying hey to Boles.tv. Pay me $1,000, please. People would do that. It's like Cameo. Have you ever heard of Cameo? You can go to the Cameo website, and there are famous people there, infamous people as well, who will make a video for you. And most of them will say whatever you tell them to say. You write up a little script and say, hey, happy birthday, Mom, from your best friend, Courtney McCutcheon, or whoever it is, whatever star it is. And they range in price from $50 to $30 to $400. Somebody said Shaka Khan is selling online Cameo things for $400. And people pay because it's a real person. They make a real video. The quality is usually not very good. The performance is usually terrible. They don't comb their hair, these celebrities. But they do it, and people love it, and they get paid. So back to Frosties, it is estimated that the Frosty creators earned $1.3 million in Ethereum based on its wallet. At that time, the tokens had a floor price average of $135. As of publishing, it has slipped to $7. Oy boy. The Frosties incident may be among the first known rug pulls of the year. A type of scam in which creators quickly cash out their gains after launching what appears to be a legitimate crypto project. At present, the developers of Frosties have closed down their Twitter, Discord, and website, and removed their wallet from OpenSea. Now that's a scam worth having, I guess. That's a lot of money. $1.3 million in probably half a day. And you close down and run away. Now they're going to, I guess the people who bought, and you're buying from people who are very technically savvy. Just the fact that they know how to get online. They know what you're selling. They know where to find it. They know how to have a wallet. They know how to use Ethereum. So these are not low-function people. These are very high-function technical people. And they're trying to do a reverse rug pull, which is somehow to track them down and get their money back. And the whole idea of blockchain is that once a transaction happens, you don't get it back. But maybe there are ways around it. I don't know. I'm not that technically proficient to figure out how to reverse a rug pull. So our friends in California, fascinating, wonderful state. They care about their people. They care about their sidewalks. They care about community. And now they have this terrible tainted water. The right to have good, affordable drinking water is the law in California. And there's a study that says that their water system does not meet the current supply. The study focused on 3 contaminants: arsenic, nitrate, and hexavalent chromium, based on their prevalence in the state as well as their known toxicity to human beings. Arsenic is found naturally in groundwater and can be concentrated by depletion of the water table. Nitrate contamination of groundwater is common in agricultural regions due to fertilizer runoff and industrial animal farming. Hexavalent chromium is produced by industrial and manufacturing activities. So according to this analysis, approximately 1.3 million Californians, nearly 3.5%, rely on domestic wells for their water supply. Of the estimated 370,000 Californians whose water supply was found to likely contain high concentrations of arsenic, nitrate, and hexavalent chromium, more than 150,000 are served by domestic wells. Domestic well water quality continues to be a prevalent data gap and is crucial to ensuring all Californians know what is in their water and if it is in fact safe to drink. I think a lot of people might be surprised to learn that, given how wealthy the state of California is, we still don't have universal access to clean drinking water. For the 3 chemical contaminants that we looked at, we found that places with a higher proportion of people of color experienced greater levels of drinking water contamination. Hey, California has nothing on Flint, Michigan. Just give us a chance. Let us run some tests. We'll be just as racist. And this pattern has already been documented in community water systems, particularly in the San Joaquin Valley. But our work is one of the first to examine the question statewide and among domestic and well communities not served by public water systems. Oh boy! Sometimes the news is good and sometimes the news is really bad. Now here's a very interesting story about chess and artificial intelligence and what we call doxxing. Doxxing is revealing private information about a person online. And it can be anything. It could be dox their email address, you could dox their children, you could dox their wives, where they work, social security number, anything that is considered private that you use to reveal a person's identity online so they are no longer anonymous. And some people do it maliciously to politicians in order to threaten their families or to make it easy to send them hate mail via voicemail or to go stand and picket outside of their homes. So it's a serious matter. And in Europe, especially France, doxing is really super illegal, and companies are not allowed to do it at all. And so there's this organization, LeChess.org. We've talked about them. We played chess with LeChess here before. And they're a French company, and they don't charge anybody to play any kind of chess at all. It's all free. This is what it looks like. Boles books. Don't look at my record. It's not any good. I don't play it there very much. But this is LeChess.org. Okay. Wonderful place. Grandmasters play there. Kids play there. Regular horrible people play there. Not Bobby Fischer plays there. That's me. And you have funky usernames that people use on Lichess. And you can also, if you have a title, a FIDE-rated title, like an IM, GM, WGM, you can go to Lichess and say, hey, this is my identity, this is who I am. Keep it private. But I'm a GM, so I want GM next to my silly username like Mr. Slappy Jackie. You can use your real name, Professor Slappy Jackie, but I want to be hidden, so hide my identity. And there are people know, usually, who those players are. But that's because the player either uses to reveal it themselves, or other people just find out because they play them and they figure it out. Because people know people. And Magnus Carlsen, the world's best player in chess, plays on Lichess every once in a while. He has, I think, 5 or 6 different accounts. You're only allowed to have one account. But he has 5 or 6 because he's Magnus. Dr. Dunkensteinen, Stubens, something like that. There's always something Stein in his name. Dr. something Stein. It's silly, it's funny. And he is very high rated, so it's like, who is this person with this very high rate? Oh, it's Magnus Carlsen. And other top rated players also play in Lichess. But if you ask Lichess, hey, is that account Magnus Carlsen's? Lichess, by the law of France, is not allowed to identify him and say, oh yeah, that's Magnus. They can't advertise and say, hey, Magnus is playing on Lichess, and here's his username, go play with him. They can't do that unless Magnus says they can do that. And Magnus is a cool guy. But there are some GMs who want to play online anonymously. They don't mind having their title by their name, but they want to play anonymously because they don't want to be harassed by people, or they want to practice without other people knowing who they are. Well, remember how the other day we were talking about DNA sniffing? And they have these machines now that filter the air and they sniff to what animal is nearby, and how soon they're going to use that to sniff human beings as well, to find out who's in the area, when, where, and why, and then record that DNA in a database. Well, we have a sort of a form of DNA sniffing going on in the chess world. And here's what's going on. You think your bishop's opening, queen's gambit, and pawn play are unique? Well, a new artificial intelligence, AI, algorithm has your chess style pegged. AI software can already identify people by their voices or handwriting, and it can also fake it, as we've discussed before. Now, AI has shown it can tag people, identify people, dox people, based on their chess playing behavior. An advance in the field of stylometrics that could help computers be better chess teachers or more human-like in their gameplay. And that's an interesting point, because when you play people and grandmasters, they will always say, do not play against a computer. Do not practice against a bot, because the bots, the computers always find the most genius move. And you need to play against people who make mistakes. Even GMs make mistakes. Computers don't make mistakes. And when you're playing, and GMs are playing, and they're wondering, am I playing a bot or am I playing a person? One of the phrases they use is, that's not a human move. No human being on Earth would come up with that idea to move that piece there, because it's so complex and so interesting that you don't know the ramifications of that seemingly odd move until 10 moves later. But a computer can see that far, but a human being can't. So the really high-level grandmasters know pretty quickly if they're playing against a person who's cheating with a bot, or if they're playing against a real person. Alarmingly, the system, this AI system, could also be used to help identify and track people, GMs, regular people, who think their online behavior is anonymous. To design and train their AI, researchers tapped an ample resource, more than 50 million human games played on the Lichess website. Uh-oh! That's a problem when you're open and free. And you're saying everybody can access whatever we do. People are going to take advantage of it. They collected games by players who had at least 1,000 times, who had played at least 1,000 times, and sampled sequences of up to 32 moves from those games. They coded each move and fed them into a neural network that represented each game as a point in a multi-dimensional space, so that each player's games formed a cluster of data points. The network was then trained to maximize the density of each player's cluster and the distance between those of different players. That required the system to recognize what was distinctive and unique about each player's style, the human moves. Researchers tested the system by seeing how well it distinguished one player from another. They gave the system 100 games from each of about 3,000 known players and 100 fresh games from a mystery player. To make the task harder, they hid the first 15 moves of each game. And that's a lot of moves they're hiding. You're in the middle game by 15 moves. And there are a lot of players have favorite openings that they use all the time. You can sometimes know a person just by what first move they make, what pawn they move first, or knight they move first. So hiding the first 15 moves is big. It's a big disadvantage, but interesting. The system then looked for the best match and identified the mystery player 86% of the time, the researchers reported last month. We didn't quite believe the results, says Reed McElroy, a student at Anderson's lab and the paper's primary author. A non-AI method was only 28% accurate. So a non-AI method means maybe just a computer or maybe just people trying to figure out, I wonder if that's Magnus. Well, the computer says 86% is Magnus, and the regular non-computer people are saying, well, I think it's Magnus 28% of the time being right. The work is really cool, says Noam Brown, a research scientist at Metaverse. We talked about them most of the week. The parent company of Facebook, who has developed superhuman poker bots. He looked forward to chess bots that mimic Magnus Carlsen, the reigning world champion, and says style-aware AI could transform other computer interactions. There's a lot of interest in chatbots, where you can have a chatbot that would speak in the style of Albert Einstein or something. Well, I find the whole thing chilling. There's no place to hide anymore because people are going to figure you out. And right now, you can go on to chess.com or Lichess, and they have deep analysis of your games over time. So the more games you play, the better the computer knows exactly who you are and what you're thinking. Is that artificial intelligence? Yes. Is it a little bit scary that you can't hide? Yes. So even if you go there and try to figure out the computers or to fake out the computers, you won't succeed because the computers already know how you're going to fake them out. So imagine when this moves, this AI, this technology moves out of the chessboard and moves out of the metaverse and moves, let's say, into the courtroom. There's a movie about it. The Minority Report. The precogs. The artificial intelligence. The people, the twins. They know you're going to commit a murder before you commit the murder, so we're going to arrest you before you commit the murder. Well, isn't that what this is a little bit? We know what chess moves you're going to make because we know who you are, and therefore we know your favorites. Well, We know where you live. We know where you work. We know you're having trouble in your family. And the AI is telling us that you're really upset and you're thinking about buying a gun. So why don't you come in and talk to us, and we're going to lock you up for a day or two, just for your own safety and for the public good. Is that where we're going with all of this artificial intelligence? It's not usually going to be used for the goodness of the world. It's going to be used to punish people and to make money for people. And now another really interesting story from Northwestern University. And how you can program your dreams to help you remember things, remember people and places, make name associations. And that's always been a big thing. It's been the silver dollar, the brass ring in brain research and sleep research is we deep sleep a couple of hours a night, maybe more. And it's wasted time, people think, because it's not, because your brain is cleaning out your body, but people think of it as wasted time. So why not find a way to teach and learn while we're sleeping? Well, this new research by Northwestern University is the first to document the effect of reactivating memory during sleep, and then face name learning. And usually what the brain does while it sleeps is it clears out your memories. So you can be fresh and you can start the new day. And this study wants to do just the opposite. This study wants to keep your memory in place and not let it escape and not let it be swept away by sleep. That's a little scary. Researchers found that people's name recall improved significantly when memories of newly learned face name associations that were reactivated while they were napping. Key to this improvement was uninterrupted deep sleep. Very interesting. The research team found that for study participants with EEG measures, a recording of electrical activity of the brain picked up by electrodes on the scalp that indicated disrupted sleep, the memory reactivation didn't help and may even have been detrimental. But in those with uninterrupted sleep during the specific times of sound presentations, of saying the name and associating the picture, the face with the name, the memory with the name, the reactivation led to a relative improvement, averaging just over 1.5 more names recalled. This study was conducted on 24 participants aged 18 to 31 who were asked to memorize the faces and names of 40 pupils from a hypothetical Latin American history class and another 40 from a Japanese history class. When each face was shown again, they were asked to produce the name that went with it. After the learning experience, participants took a nap while the researchers carefully monitored brain activity using EEG measurements. When participants reached the N3 deep sleep state, some of the names were softly played on a speaker with music that was associated with one of the classes. When participants woke up, they were retested on recognizing the faces and recalling the name that went with each face. Researchers say, the finding on the relationship between sleep disruption and memory accuracy is noteworthy for several reasons. We already know that some sleep disorders, like apnea, can impair memory. Our research suggests A potential explanation for this: frequent sleep interruptions at night might be degrading memory. So there you have it. Fascinating work. Our chessboard is outing us. Our chess AI is doxing us. We have no anonymity left, which I don't mind. I think everyone everywhere should always be who they are in real life. I don't think anonymity serves anybody, unless you're in danger, unless you're hiding from somebody, unless you're being threatened. But otherwise, if you're online, I'd like to know who I'm talking to and what their real name is and where they're from, because then they're usually better behaved and more truthful. And this idea of being able to nap and to recall a name and to find your way home, very interesting stuff. And now it's time for a very small blood pressure break. And then Jana will be here. Yes, she's coming up to give you a very nice lesson in American Sign Language. She's going to show you some vegetable signs that you can use to order your lunch today, virtually, online, however you wish to communicate, as long as it's visual and can be seen and understood. We will return in a moment. And we are back here on Boles.tv. I'm David Boles. That was the beautiful and talented Jana Marie Sweeney. Here with you every Friday around 10:15 to say hello and to teach you a formal or informal lesson in American Sign Language. I said next week you should have a little test at the end where you say, okay, we're going to review. And I'm going to sign, okay, with this. You type, you tell me what the sign is. That would be fun. And as she was sharing her wonderful signs, I'm always, this is one of my favorite signs. It always reminds me when they do vegetables and healthy eating is this sign for bean. Now, as I understand it, American Sign Language does not really have a sign for bean. You just fingerspell B-E-A-N. But a Spanish friend of ours, Cuban friend of ours, taught us that their sign in their sign language for bean is this. So your fingernail is indicating the bean. Oh, it's very sweet, right? Bean. So tomorrow, Jana Marie will be here at 11 a.m. Eastern. And Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Tomorrow she'll be taking questions about disability. If you have questions about deafness or cochlear implants or hearing aids, she will do her very best to adapt and answer any question you have. She'll also be talking about pro-tactile for deaf and blind people. That sounds very, very interesting. How do you communicate with a deaf, blind person? Well, the short answer is their hands are on your hands. That's how it happens. And that must be very difficult in the days of coronavirus. Another topic she'll be covering tomorrow is how to let go. 7 ways of letting go. Are you letting go of people, problems, issues? Probably a little bit of everything. So that's good too. We're always about trying to find something interesting and learn something new every day on Boles.tv. Well, it's been a super fantastic day and a wonderful week. I feel like we covered so much and talked about so much, and yet we've just begun and now we're ending. Taking a pause. And Monday is going to be very interesting. We will be here live on Monday to have a wonderful conversation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the rise of the right, a little bit of Nazism, and its roots in the Midwest. We have a whole big bag full of N95 masks on their way. Not like our ASTM3 clear bend-shaped masks, which are very good, or our KN95 masks, which are okay, and our cloth masks, which Dr. Fauci tells us to now throw away. But we're having, if everything goes right and everything gets delivered, we'll be having a mask review Monday right here on the show. If you have a question for me, you can write me, David, at Boles.tv. If you have a question for Jana, Jana at Boles.tv. You can find us on Twitter at David Boles, Facebook, BOLES, TikTok, Boles TV, Instagram, Boles Books, Discord server, David Boles. So until next time, be well, take care. I will see you on Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here, live and in person on Boles TV. I'm David Boles. Take care, and I will see you soon.